what happens to a man when everything he loves is taken away from him? And more importantly, if you were in a situation, what would you do? Yes, you, person behind the screen. Would you wait for the police? Trust the system? Try to move on and rebuild your life? Or would you want revenge? Be honest, because it's easy to say what you would do when it's not happening to you. Frank Castle made his choice. He didn't wait nor heal, he went to war. From the outside that looks cathartic, like someone is finally doing what everyone else is scared to do, but that's where people get it twisted. Because that's not power, that's what it looks like when a man stops believing there's any other way to live, and starts believing that death is the only answer. To understand the psyche of the Punisher, you can't just look at what Frank does, you have to understand how he thinks. But before we dive into that, I want to ask y'all for a huge favor. I've been getting absolutely bitched by copyright, which I'm trying to currently fix. So please, if you could like and subscribe, plus turn on post notifications, that'll help me out immensely. Also, this is completely optional, but if you want to support me further, you could check out my Buy Me a Coffee. Again, this is completely optional. But anyways, let's break down Frank through 4 pillars. Let's get into it. The biggest mistake people make with Frank Castle is thinking his bloodlust started with tragedy. It didn't. What happened at the carnival was just an excuse to finally cut loose. Frank didn't suddenly become violent, that part of him was already there. This dude was low-key a sociopath, I'm not gonna hold you. The only thing keeping it in check was structure, and the military gave him exactly that. It gave Frank all the basics you would typically find in the Marines. You know, direction, control, and encouraged the mentality he was trying to hold back. That's why Frank thrived in war. Especially mentally. He understood it, dominated the battlefield, and relished in the glory from completed missions. It was heaven. As much as Frank loves his family and tries to leave the battlefield behind, war will always be his true love, and his wife knew the truth. Frank's humanity wasn't determined by morals or God, it was determined by his family. They held it together for him and maintained his composure. They gave him something to come back to after every deployment. All in all, they gave him a reason to live. So when they were taken away, he didn't become something new per se. He lost the only thing keeping that side of him in check. And regarding the system he came from, oh yeah, that only made that mindset worse. Frank already had basic military training, which is already bad enough, but it was his time in Cerberus that really messed him up. It wasn't just training that Frank went through, it was literally conditioning. The system looks for people like Frank, people who can detach and act without hesitation. That's extremely valuable in war, so it gets rewarded.
I pointed. Now you need to go shoot.
In Cerberus, you're not thinking, you're only executing. And over time, of course that will rewire you. That's where PTSD starts to show. War becomes the only place where your brain feels normal. And here's the part most people don't like to say out loud. This isn't exclusive to Cerberus or the Marines. The whole military system doesn't actually care about these people. It only cares about what they can do. Because at their peak, guys like Frank are assets. They're useful so they get praised and get sent right back out there. But when the war ends, they're on their own, with no real understanding of what they've been turned into. You go from being needed to being ignored, and that's real life. Not just in Marvel, DC, or whatever, but real life. You see it all the time. Veterans coming back with PTSD without direction or purpose. They're trying to fit into a world that doesn't make sense to them anymore. And people act surprised when they fall apart. A prime example of this form of mental deterioration is Lewis. He went through similar systems and conditioning as Frank, and without structure after his discharge, he spirals and comes back a broken man. Not a soldier or a civilian anymore, just stuck in between. Frank fits the same mold, but the differences are that he never lets himself become idle, and he's not as mentally malleable as Lewis. Frank loses his family and gets thrown straight into another war, but this time it's a war of his own choosing. That's why he doesn't spiral like Lewis, not necessarily because he's stronger, but because he never stopped fighting. Unlike Lewis, Frank didn't have to be manipulated into searching for a mission and a purpose, he had one from the jump. Matt and Frank aren't opposites. They have the same impulse, but it just gets handled differently. Because as much as Matt likes to think, he's not cleaner than Frank by much. Like, at all. Matt loves the violence too. You could see it in every fight, and every single time he puts the suit on. There's a part of him that enjoys it. Difference is that he restrains it. He knows what will happen if he doesn't control himself. Hence why he clings to the system even when he knows it's broken. Matt's not stupid. He sees the corruption clear as day, and the loopholes people use to get out of being indicted. Or should I say here's the loophole? Anyways. He lives in that reality every day, yet he still chooses to believe in something better even when he shouldn't. He knows it won't work perfectly, but without it, everything he knows will fall apart. When it comes to being stubborn and set in their ways, they're almost identical, like two brothers fighting, but the only difference between Matt and Frank is that Matt listens. He listens to Foggy, to Karen, to Father Langton, and he questions himself even when he's being a hypocrite. Sometimes he's too stubborn and needs people to slap him back into gear, so he has people like Foggy to call him out on his bullshit. He criticizes Frank but lives in the same space, only with rules. Meanwhile, Frank doesn't do all that. He removes the rules entirely. While Matt occasionally slips up and lacks empathy for criminals, Frank completely stops seeing criminals as people.
The people you murdered deserve another chance.
What, to kill again, rape again? Is that what
No,
you
Frank,
want?
to try again, Frank. To try.
That's the difference. At that point, there's no stopping him, and that's where his logic becomes dangerous. Because in some cases, he's completely right. There are people that don't change, people like Fisk, Russo, Nobu, etc. And Frank's solution is simple. Just end it by ending them. No second chances, no none of that. But once you decide that nobody can change, remove the possibility of things ever getting better. You're not fixing the system, you're just replacing it with yourself. And without a proper system that allows for rehabilitation, you're leaning towards fanaticism. At a certain point in his life, Frank has a choice regarding what comes after. Do you heal or do you keep going? And every single time he chooses to keep going, not because he's incapable of change, it's because he won't. He's seen too much, done too much, so instead of dealing with it like a normal person, he channels it. Frank Castle no longer separates himself from the Punisher, they are the same thing. That's why he can't stop, because stopping means facing everything he's been avoiding. And it's not like he's antisocial by circumstance, he's antisocial by choice. He can connect. He has friends, and at this point I can even say he has family. Like Curtis. Curtis tries his best to help him move forward and articulate the demons he has inside. He's like the brother that Frank never had. He has Amy, he protects her, guides her, and connects with her like the daughter he never got to see grow up. He has Karen, Madani, hell, even Matt. These are all people who see more in him than what he does. That breaks his whole argument. He's not incapable, he just refuses. Because accepting that fact means he doesn't have to live like this, so instead he just doubles down and locks himself into war permanently. By the end, he's honest about it and he cares. He does love these people, but he doesn't want to change. Oh boy, alright, let's get into it. The biggest problem with Punisher isn't what he does, it's how people see him. Because the version of Frank that you're watching changes how you interpret him. In the MCU, he's more controlled and sympathetic, and yeah, sometimes he feels completely necessary. There are some moments where the system clearly isn't enough, and Frank steps in and handles the situation like nobody else can. In those moments, he leans closer to a hero than most people, including myself, want to admit. He's not exactly ideal, but New York does need him. There are so many instances throughout the Netflix and MCU era where things could have been extremely dire without Punisher's help. This makes him a better character and is more compelling because you understand where he's coming from, and sometimes he's even more effective than Matt. But that's exactly what makes him dangerous as an idea, because that same logic can justify anything if you're not careful. Now compare that to like Max or Warzone. There's no nuance to his character, he's a killer and a killer only. Frank isn't navigating a broken system, he's just operating outside of it completely. At that point, he's not really even an anti-hero, he's more of a force. He's closer to a villain than anything else, to be honest. The MCU gives you a version of Frank that you can root for, while the others remind you of what the character actually is. And somewhere between those versions, people lose the point. We've seen this happen before with characters like Rorschach. It's the same idea. The original interpretation of the character is not supposed to be idolized, but the on-screen adaptations make the character cooler or more compelling, so people start to idolize them. These same people don't understand that the characters are a critique of absolutism. The irony behind most of these people idolizing and trying to embody the characters and their values are that they work within the same systems that these characters hate. Anyways, Frank Castle isn't a role model, he's a warning. Because if you actually asked him if he chooses life again, he wouldn't. That's the part people ignore. To be fair, regarding the MCU version of Frank, there are moments where he's trying to do the right thing and steps in when nobody else will. Plus, he actually helps people, and you can respect that, even admire that, but that doesn't make him something to idolize. Because at the end of the day, he's still self-destructive. That's what separates him from other versions. Don't admire Frank Castle for what he is. If anything, respect the moments where he's trying to be better.